Hello. Thanks for tuning in. This is Dr. B. Let's get to it.
Chapter 9. Guarding the Family Jewels. Keeping Kids and Teens Safe. A child enters your home and for the next 20 years makes so much noise you can hardly stand it. The child departs, leaving the house so silent you think you are going mad. John Andrew Holmes. The young vulnerable woman found herself betrayed by her lover. Broken and weary, she left his apartment, heading towards her sister's home. She was in the midst of one of the worst blizzards Greenwich Village had ever seen. As she approached her sister's building, she collapsed, just feet away from the entrance. An old painter who lived above her sister saw her fall into the cold embrace of the snow. He quickly gathered her in his arms and took her inside her sister's apartment. The young woman was placed in bed and the doctor was called. The physician arrived, examined her, and announced that she had pneumonia. However, because she was young and strong, the doctor felt that she would have no problem recovering. But as the days moved on, she just laid there, sadly peering out the window at a vine growing across the alley. Many of its leaves fell as the cold overpowered them. Rather than getting better, the young woman's condition got worse. Her will to live waned. She began to talk irrationally of how the days of her life were like the leaves of the vine on that brick wall. The leaves were becoming fewer. First there were 12, then 5, and now only a few were left. The sick woman's distraught sister realized that when no more leaves were left, that her sister would go as well. Then there was one. Only one leaf left, hanging on in the bitter cold. The old gentleman painter visited, looking in on his friend's ill sister. His friend cried with the pain of anticipating the loss of her loved one. She explained that her sick young sister had tied her fate to that of the leaf, and that the leaf would not be there come morning. The shades were drawn tightly as night fell and dread began to fill the lowly apartment. In the morning, the sick woman asked her sister to open the drapes to reveal the vine. Her sister hesitated, for fear of her ill sister seeing what she already felt. But due to her loved one's insistence, the concerned sister finally pulled the string and revealed the truth. There was the vine, but it was not only a vine, it was a vine with one lonely leaf. Apparently, the stubborn little leaf had held on through the night. The sick young woman became energized. She took the sight as a sign that she too must hold on. For the first time in a long while, she was hungry and asked for something to eat. Her sister was beyond being relieved. At that same moment in the hallway, there was commotion. From the outside was heard the ring of an ambulance. The relieved sister stepped out into the hallway and was told that the old gentleman who lived upstairs, who had been so helpful, had died. One of the other tenants commented on how crazy the old man was. Just last night, the old painter had been begging for paints and been refusing to get out of that cold alleyway. The sister stepped back into her apartment and gazed out the window at the leaf. The wind blew, and as it did, the vine moved, but the leaf did not. It stayed there, unattached to anything but the wall. She walked towards the window in order to see better. She looked to the ground beneath the shivering vine and immovable leaf. There lay the brushes and paints, left behind by her friend. O. Henry penned the basis for this story in what seems ages ago. However, it still rings true today. There are still times when circumstances call for whatever is necessary to protect those we love. Parents become frustrated with their children from time to time. It would be inhuman not to occasionally complain. But with all the trials and troubles, there is still love and flashes of pride and satisfaction. There is also that tremendous sense of responsibility that goes along with raising children. Perhaps now more than at any other time in history, there is a need to protect them. From the 1980s, with Atlanta's missing children and their murders, to the more recent abductions of young ones, even from their own bedrooms, the need to take precautions screams for our attention. Threats to our kids demand that protective measures be taken, and that our children be trained to protect themselves. Children have seen stories on the news and heard reports in their schools of children disappearing. Not only do our children feel less safe as a result of violence and the possibility of being kidnapped, they are afraid due to the 9/11 horror. Through these threats to security, they have become more aware of their vulnerability. As if fear for themselves wasn't enough, they also fear for their families. Our children need protection from their fears as well as terrorism, abduction, sexual abuse, physical abuse, drugs and alcohol, negative peer pressure, and what some would like to call entertainment. Video games, movies, CDs, videos, and the internet all lay before parents as battlegrounds. Concern is not a matter of being prudish, but practical. Most things that can be used for good can be used for evil. Predators not only walk our streets, but also lurk in the corners of internet chat rooms designed for our children. They also reside in the boardrooms of companies selling self-destruction to our youth and pleasure at too high a price. Most likely, God has a special place in heaven for good parents. He also has a special place in hell for these eaters of our young. Therefore, let's begin by looking at one of the more frightening threats to our children. These predators seek to take our children's innocence, security, and sometimes their very lives. Abduction. Ladies and gentlemen, there is an evil in the land. This evil is one that frightens parents the most, but the anxiety caused by thinking about losing a child must not prompt us to stick our heads in the sand. If the threat of children being taken were not so great, there would be no need for an organization for missing and exploited children or the Amber Alert system. News coverage has been phenomenal about children who have gone missing, been kidnapped or found murdered. Stories of molestation and torture too often are part of the side drama. It is impossible to shield our children from all the coverage. They have heard the reports on the news, listened to stories at school, or heard it in the prayers at their churches. The news coverage has been a two-edged sword. One edge has created a sharpened awareness of the dangers to children. Both society and parents have gotten a wake-up call. We have become more on the lookout for the possibility of our children being injured or taken. The other edge of this sword, however, cuts in a not-so-helpful direction. It has worked to inspire fear in our kids. There have also been copycats who, through media attention, have been inspired to act out their own twisted fantasies. These may be people who had thought about abducting or molesting children but had enough restraint in the past not to act on those impulses. Now, with all of the publicity, it has stimulated some of them to the point of action. The media coverage has lessened their self-restraint. Fear of imprisonment is no longer enough to hold them back. Sometimes one danger gives birth to another. Protecting the health and well-being of our children should be our first priority. Measures of protection must be found. Because there are so many threats, steps to protect the innocent must be taken. Talking. The first step in protecting our children is to talk with them. How we share information with them is vitally important. The goal is to sensitize our children to danger and for them to become more aware. However, they also need to know how to protect themselves. When we share information, we must not frighten our child to such a degree that they are unable to do what they need to do to protect themselves when under pressure. Freezing in the face of danger doesn't protect them. Excessive anxiety is what phobias are made from. Children need to be encouraged to use themselves as barometers, to be sensitive to how people and situations make them feel. There is an instinctive self-protection program that is built into the mind of each individual. If someone gives them the creeps, there is usually a good reason for it. Unfortunately, because of the media, exposure to violent entertainment, having other people train and teach our children as well as look after them, our children have become desensitized to danger. They will often follow the direction of others with little question. Therefore, this natural instinct that detects danger has been suppressed. When they are around an odd or suspicious person, the warning doesn't always go off. A child needs to be helped to understand that if a stranger, or even a family member or friend is acting oddly, that this is a warning sign. A child needs to go somewhere away from the suspiciously acting person. They need to let their parents know what has happened. Anything that makes a child uncomfortable needs to be reported to parents. Furthermore, when seeing the strange, aggressive, or confusing behavior of others, children need to know how to take further steps to protect themselves. Know, go, and blow. Children need to be taught that if they are approached by someone suspicious, to remember know, go, and blow. If they are told or asked to go somewhere and the situation is suspicious, they need to practice the response of no. And if someone persists, they need to yell and scream. As soon as they can, they need to go. They need to run in the other direction and get away from the person. Someone intending to abduct or otherwise do harm can't follow through if they can't take the child away. Then children need to blow. Children need to let it all out and tell their parents what happened. Any police officer that's around or other person in authority should be told as well, especially if a parent isn't available. Children need to know that it is all right to avoid uncomfortable situations and people acting strangely. If they find themselves in such situations, they need to escape, and if it is difficult to escape, they need to defend and fight so that they can then flee. A child's cooperation is expected with parents and teachers, but not with strangers and others creating discomfort. If, heaven forbid, that anything serious does happen, a child needs to tell. A child has to believe that parents will love and accept them no matter what has happened or what they say. Know, go, and blow is a simple, effective strategy that a child can hold on to and understand. This strategy is being strongly recommended for parents to review and practice with their children. The approach begins by helping a child be on guard. Being on guard. One of the things that we need to teach our children is that someone who wants to hurt them is going to want to get them alone. So being with other people helps them to be safe. Being around others includes being with people they know or just going to where there are more people. Predators will use any means at their disposal to trap children. For example, a car approaches, a man leans out the window and says, "I have something I would like to give you," or, "Could you help me look for my pet?" More examples include, "Could you help me find this place in the neighborhood?" or, "Your parents sent me to pick you up." Other scenarios would include someone approaching them at a mall, in a park, or a bathroom. It is not unusual for child predators to frequent places where children tend to be. For this reason, parents need to be careful even with programs designed for children. A child needs to recognize that if someone is trying to get them alone somewhere, this can be a signal of danger. They should also understand that it isn't always a stranger that could hurt them. It might be a friend of the family or even an estranged family member. Generally speaking, a child needs to be taught to turn and go in the other direction, and to stay out of arm's reach of a suspicious person. When anxiety strikes, get to a safe place as soon as possible. In most instances, we should teach our children to respect their elders and people in positions of authority. But we need to make it clear to them that in some situations they are not to listen, and if anyone touches them, they are to shout and scream as loudly as they can. They need to get away and tell their tale. Passive children make easier victims. Gavin de Becker, in the book Protecting the Gift, notes a number of things that are helpful in guiding our children towards safety. He suggests that rather than teaching kids not to talk to strangers, stress not talking to strange people. This approach emphasizes permission to be a barometer by intuitively sensing that a person is threatening or could be dangerous. Kids should be encouraged to identify strange people by the way they look, the way they talk, or the way they otherwise behave. We as parents must remember that fear can serve a purpose. While excessive fear disables, a healthy amount of fear puts a child on guard and allows them to act and avoid harm. For example, stepping onto a busy street and hearing an automobile horn should create fear. That fear should prompt a child to step back onto the safe sidewalk. Teaching children to protect themselves involves them understanding not to go anywhere with a stranger or anyone else without a parent's knowledge and approval. They need to be reminded that a dangerous person will want to get them somewhere else because of fear of being caught. Predators must get their victim away to exercise their evil. De Becker goes on to explain that the rule of "don't go" should not be limited to only strangers. Unfortunately, neighbors and even family members can sometimes represent a threat. However, there is the need to be practical, and there will be times when someone other than a parent will have to pick up a child. The most efficient form of protection regarding travel is to devise a family code that only an approved person would know. When someone other than a parent approaches a child, that person has to give the code word or phrase. Only then does the child know that it is safe and that they may go with them. This should be standard practice if your child is going to go anywhere with anyone other than you. Make some noise. Protecting the Gift also addresses the habit of predators to tell children not to make noise. They understand that if a child makes a sound, they will be in danger of being caught. The thing for a child to do is to make as much noise and commotion as possible. A child needs to scream for help and include a phrase like, "This man is not my father," or "This woman is not my mother." This announcement prevents the possibility of passers-by seeing a kicking and screaming kid and assuming that this is a misbehaving child with a parent. Too often a child and adult seen together bring about the assumption that the adult is the parent. The shows on television and the movies tend to portray victims as passive and giving in to their fears and following the directions of the bad guys. Unfortunately, in real-life abduction situations, rarely is there a hero that rides in on a white steed at the last possible moment to bring salvation. Children must be taught to protect themselves. A child needs to be taught that it is okay to be assertive and in these threatening situations to scream and make noise. They need to understand that they can say no and need to do so in a loud, firm voice, repeatedly if necessary. Children need to understand that they can tell an adult to go away. Furthermore, they need to know that if this doesn't work, that it is all right for them to strike and kick and injure an adult in order to protect themselves. A show of force is appropriate under these circumstances. The old saying that nice guys finish last fits. In these situations, nice children may not finish at all. Practice and preparation. A child should not only be aware that it is okay to take aggressive action, but they must know that their parents stand behind them. A child needs to believe they're supported. Discussing, training, and rehearsing reinforce this belief. De Becker goes on in his book to say that children need to learn and practice skills for protecting themselves, specifically physical and violent skills. Just telling a child what to do and how to do it doesn't do the trick. There needs to be muscle memory. A child needs to know how to use self-defense skills through practice and needs to rehearse saying no in that firm, loud voice. Practicing hits and kicks and how to move away to escape are also important. An emphasis should be placed on explaining when this aggressive behavior is appropriate. This training is especially needed when younger children who could misunderstand and use these skills in situations where they are not being threatened. Physical protection is important. However, mentally preparing our children and helping them become more socially aware affords them protection as well. By being aware, they can see a threat coming before the danger arrives. When a threat appears, kids can know how to be assertive and have a plan of action in order to face that threat. Mental preparation also reduces the risk of being overwhelmed and freezing. Children trained to take physical action to protect themselves tend to be more confident when threatened. Children don't have a lot of physical power. They are smaller and have less life experience and maturity to draw from than do adults. Therefore, they are less imposing and easier targets. They don't have the defenses the average adult has. This translates into children being seen as potential victims by these predators because they lack defenses. By preparing our children for possible threats, they appear stronger and we make them less likely to become victims. Since it is impossible to be with our children 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, we must help them to be on their guard to protect themselves. There are few things as comforting for a parent as knowing that their child is safe. Unfortunately, concerns for safety don't apply only to kidnappers. Abuse. A particularly ugly danger to our children lies in the possibility of being sexually abused. While it is distasteful to speak of, it is too great a threat to be ignored. The first thing a loving parent needs to keep in mind is to communicate necessary safety information, but without overkill. When a parent approaches the subject of sexual abuse calmly and directly, a child is much more likely to absorb the information and then be able to act appropriately in the face of danger. Unemotionally presenting information allows a child to hear and understand skills for safety. However, if a parent becomes very emotional and frightens their child, they can actually work in the opposite direction of their intent. They can create unnecessary anxiety for their child. A child could think that they are in constant danger and that each moment and every person presents a threat. In contrast, when they are actually in a threatening situation, they could hesitate to act due to their high level of anxiety and then not be able to protect themselves. A calm, cool, direct, collected approach should be taken by parents. What needs to be communicated is that there are threats out there. While most people are good and the majority of situations safe, there are some that could harm a child. If a child is approached by a sleazy individual, they need to know what to do. The same tactics used concerning abduction apply here. Parents need to know who their children are with. This is not always an easy task. Often it is difficult to know the backgrounds of people. However, if a parent becomes aware of any history of any form of abuse, their child should not be around that person. If a situation is unavoidable, a child should never be left unsupervised. Dangerous people can be strangers, neighbors, or even close family members. The best policy is not to leave children with anyone that you don't thoroughly trust. Certainly don't allow for anyone to be alone with your child who you are not sure of. Parents also should be on the lookout for behaviors on the part of any adult that are not normal. This possibility includes being overly physical. Such situations as wanting to be physically close, wrestle, kiss, or touch may be a warning sign. Notice if behavior seems inappropriate. These people create situations to be alone with a child. A sign that there is a problem is when after a person has been alone with a child, there is a strong negative emotional response by the child. Emotional numbness, moodiness, fear, withdrawal, or anger can be evidence that something has happened. Be on the lookout for any sort of behavioral change. When a child seems uncomfortable or acts out of character, there is usually a reason. Most communities require pedophiles to be registered with law enforcement. Sometimes it is helpful to contact local law enforcement to find out who is living in your community that has such a history. This is public information. It should be realized that even the most caring parents, on the lookout for danger, aren't able to see into the minds of the people that come into contact with their child. So it is generally best to err on the side of caution. Even an on-guard parent can have their child run into potentially abusive situations. Therefore, a child needs to be taught what to do when facing potential threats. Just as with the possibility of abduction, a child needs to be taught not to be alone with people that the parents have not approved. As mentioned earlier, a victimizer wants to and must get their victim alone in order to perpetuate their crimes. When feeling threatened, the no, go, and blow approach applies once again. Furthermore, a child should have it explained to them that if anyone tries to do anything that frightens them, hurts them, threatens them, or makes them feel uncomfortable, that they should go to their parents, a teacher, or a police officer. They should go to whoever is available as quickly as they can. A child should be helped to understand that this is what an abuser doesn't want them to do. The abuser knows that if the child talks, that they will get caught and go to jail. For this reason, it is good to explain to a child that an evil person like this will try to get them to keep secrets about what they suggested, tried, or did. A child needs to know that an abuser will attempt to get them to keep secrets, and that a predator will lie to them about things that will happen if the secret gets out. For example, they can imply that if the child tells anyone, that people from children's services will come and take them from their family, or that their parents will go to jail. Perpetrators will also make open threats. The child needs to be aware of this possibility. Abusers may threaten to hurt the child's parents, to hurt them, to take them away, or even to kill their pets. It needs to be clearly explained to a child that once secrets are out, that person will be caught and they won't have power to harm. The predator won't be able to hurt anyone. Not understanding the true situation is often the reason that children continue to keep secrets and remain vulnerable to abuse. In addition, a child will frequently believe that they are somehow at fault for what happened and that they will get punished. Children keep quiet when they think they will be in trouble. Parents need to make it clear to children that if something happens or if someone approaches them, that the child will not be in trouble, but that the other person will be held responsible. What is and isn't an appropriate behavior is another important topic to cover when teaching children about sexual abuse. One commonly used technique is to explain the difference between good and bad touch. Good touch can be explained as a touch that feels comfortable and positive. This can be holding hands, a gentle pat on the back, a warm hug, or a kiss on the cheek. An emphasis should be placed on the child's comfort level, remembering that they need to be their own barometer. When they feel uncomfortable, they shouldn't feel that they have to accept violation of their boundaries. This includes even what typically would be considered as good touch. Bad touch can be described as touches that make them feel uncomfortable. Certain types of hugs, kisses, or any touching in their private areas would be included. Private places include the chest, genitals, and behind. These are where most bad touches occur. A convenient way of describing private areas, especially to a female child, is to point out that any area that would be covered by a one-piece swimming suit is private. To summarize, children need to be aware that there are bad people out there. These predators may try to get them alone and attempt to touch them in ways that would be wrong and make them feel uncomfortable. If anyone attempts or does this, a child should use the no, go, and blow approach. They need to say no loudly and fight if they need to in order to get away. They need to get away. Then they should tell parents or anyone else that needs to know. A child should be assured that when they tell, action will be taken. One of the worst things that can happen is to have a child follow through with their part and then have a parent not believe that something has occurred. False reports of abuse and attempted abuse are very rare. Children will not usually say things that they think will get them into trouble. They generally believe that being approached or inappropriately touched means that they did something wrong. So when a child speaks up, it is time to listen. Unfortunately, abuse is not the only sexual threat to our children. Sexual exposure. Don't kids say the cutest things? Well, not always. It's the rare parent these days who hasn't been shocked at some question, comment, or word that has tripped off of their young one's tongue. The usual parental response, after picking themselves off the floor, is, "Where did you hear that?" Sometimes the child knows, but many times they don't recall where they picked it up. Sometimes they just don't want to tell. Children pick up words from friends. They see and hear things on television. At times they just repeat what they hear from their parents. Children are sponges, soaking in the information that is around them. They learn more during those early years of living than at any other period of life. What they swallow, they digest. However, children don't understand the significance of what they have digested. This is especially true if they are trying to make sense of adult matters. But once exposed to certain words and behavior, they do what comes natural for children. They mimic. They repeat what they've heard, they describe what they've seen, and they play by doing what they saw being done. Children are so bombarded with stimulating material that is over their heads that we shouldn't be surprised that there are times when they will repeat words or mimic behavior. This happens even when they don't understand that it is crude or inappropriate. It is not unusual for a parent to confront a child about something they've said, and the child to stand there with an expression of confusion. Children are exposed to sexual situations repeatedly as they watch the television. Even programming that is geared towards children, such as cartoons, can have a high degree of sexual innuendo. Movies are frequent offenders. Many of the stars in family films were once stand-up comics with risque repertoires. Their sexual humor wasn't lost once they began making their films. It was merely softened, but kids still get the sexual messages. Children can be heard repeating lines from movies, not fully comprehending what they are saying. The concepts are obviously too grown up for them to understand, but curiosity is pricked. Unfortunately, and uncomfortably for most parents, it is not unusual for children to ask questions or make comments about sexual matters. Little Johnny might come home and casually say that Mark and Becky were French kissing. Whether or not he understands what French kissing really means is another matter. Little Mary could come home and ask, "Mama, what's a pecker?" or state that some of the kids were humping at nap time. These statements can be made quite innocently. A child is bringing something to the attention of someone they trust concerning something they don't understand. An overreacting parent will only teach their child that these sorts of questions are not okay to ask. A child will quickly learn to remain silent, but questions won't go unanswered. Children will get answers somewhere else if they can't get them from where they should. Keep in mind that a child can use a sexual term not knowing it is sexual or assuming it means something else. They can repeat without having understanding. Children don't understand and are not prepared to deal with sexual material. They have not developed psychologically and mentally to be able to understand and cope with adult issues. Children aren't emotionally capable of comprehending the significance and dangers involved in exposure to adult issues. Due to exposure to sexual matter, kids are making more frequent references to genitals and sexual acts. When children engage in sexual behavior, pretend, or talk about sex, it is not the same as it is for adults. Due to a child's natural curiosity, they have a tendency to act out what they have been exposed to, or what they are confused about. Their behaviors are not purely sexual. However, these experiences can begin laying a road for more problems. These situations can be quite frightening for a parent. Since sex is an adult area, it is very tempting for a child who has the opportunity to peer into it. They act out of curiosity, to feel more grown up or impress their friends. However, getting exposed to sex can prompt them to become more involved and become more confused. As they grow older, situations can become more dangerous due to an increased emphasis on the physical. There are increasingly more opportunities to experiment and experience the emotional fallout. Early exposure to sexual material results in confusion between physical sex and true intimacy. Parents need to keep in mind how impressionable children are, and that what they see and hear affects how they think and feel. Young girls at an early age begin to learn that sensuality grabs the attention of others. They don't understand the depths of this attraction, nor their own vulnerability. However, they know that they like the attention. Attention translates into them feeling better about themselves and feeling more valued by others. Young girls can easily confuse a boy's attraction for them with being loved. This unfortunately leaves them open to being taken advantage of later. For example, a girl who gets sexual attention through how she dresses and her makeup usually appears much older than her age. Then comes the danger of sexual experimentation. Attraction gets attention, and attention leads to actions. Sexual activity typically begins at an earlier age than in the past. Sexual behavior by the young is on the increase. This reality includes an increase of oral sex and the promotion of bisexual experimentation, especially among girls. Children like to feel grown up, teenagers even more so. Adolescents add to their normal sexual curiosity the desire for independence and rebelliousness. One way that teenagers get attention and approval from each other is to talk about sexual escapades. Immaturity prompts talk to impress their peers, hoping to attract attention. Implications. As parents, we need to do whatever we can to protect our children. Unfortunately, we can't shield them completely. Television, computers, and movies are too big a part of our culture. Children will be exposed. Our goal should be to limit their exposure to inappropriate material and to watch them. This allows parents to answer questions and point out what is appropriate, or simply turn the infernal machines off. Parents also need to step in to correct for sexual language and any sexual behavior that they see. Warning children about exposure and being aware of the normal drives of adolescence is critical. Sharing information about the birds and bees is still appropriate to do with kids. However, it does need to be in a fashion that is age-appropriate. The younger a child is, the fewer the details that should be shared. Most children don't want excessive detail anyway, and if they do want more information, they will ask. There is a flood of sexual material in the world. Children are curious and tend to do what they see and hear. Therefore, it can be difficult to know if behaviors of concern are a result of abuse or exposure to inappropriate material. Sexual language and actions can be either from exposure to entertainment or it can be a result of sexual abuse. Sexual talk and sensual gestures may or may not be an indicator of a serious problem. However, any form of simulating intercourse or oral sexuality needs to be investigated further. Self-stimulation, especially in view of others, can be another cause for concern. Seeking the guidance of a professional is critical. A note should be made here to remember that it is not only adults who abuse children. Children can abuse other children. When seeing inappropriate behavior and telling a child not to do it, explain the reasons that it is not appropriate. However, don't stop there, but give alternative behaviors to help point out what is appropriate. Resist the temptation to overreact. Your calmness will help you to be heard. Protecting our kids from what they might hear or view needs to be a priority because exposure to sexual material only stimulates more curiosity. The following are prudent recommendations by Diane Hales from an article she wrote in Parents Magazine a few years ago. First, take charge. Children shouldn't be given complete freedom and choice in what they wear or what they eat, so why would we give them free rein with videos, CDs, and television? I would add that it would make no sense to be concerned about what children put on their bodies or puts in their bellies, and not be concerned about what they are putting in their minds. A frequent complaint that parents hear is that everyone else is doing it, or that some other parents allow their kids to do it. This reminds me of that question, if everyone else jumped off the bridge, would you do it as well? Keep TVs and computers in family spaces. Children don't need televisions in their rooms. There is no real handicap for them in having to go to a family room, den, or some other family area to view television. This allows parents to monitor television viewing as well as internet use. This gives an opportunity to discuss what a child has seen and make additions or corrections as needed. I would go on to say that it gives an opportunity to watch a child watching what they are watching. Don't assume anything goes over a child's head. By the time a child reaches the age of 5 or 6, they can pick up sexual undercurrents and innuendo. This includes during primetime programming. Children may also be more sensitive to such material because they tend to pay closer attention, whereas adults have already been desensitized to sexual innuendo over the years. Make sure your TV has a V-chip. This is a device that prevents children from accessing certain channels. It is particularly useful if older children or babysitters may flip to inappropriate shows when you're not around. The V-chip keeps explicit sexual language and behavior out of your home. Don't encourage sexual precociousness. Bearing skin, wearing makeup, and parading in clothing that is sensual promotes premature sexual behavior. A child who believes we think it is cute, or we applaud what they are doing, gets the message of approval. Children need to appreciate their bodies and see themselves as special, and they need to focus on who they are and what they can do, rather than how they appear. Take advantage of teachable moments. It is a good policy to ask open-ended questions when watching television and movies with your kids. An example would be, "What do you think about that?" Or, "What do you think that means?" Or, "How did that make you feel?" Or, "How would you feel if something happened like that to you?" This is a wonderful opportunity to promote your values and attitudes about sex and sexuality. Emphasize respect for oneself and others. Girls should understand that they are simply not put on earth as sexual objects, regardless of what the media promotes. Girls should see their value within themselves and not in their appearance or how well the boys like them. Boys need to understand that girls are more than simply sexual objects for their gratification. They need to know they need to express respect. Keep the conversation going. Lines of communication need to be kept open. Children should understand that it is safe to talk about anything with their parents, even issues of sex and sexuality. Questions should not be ignored or dismissed or communicated to a child as if they are silly or unimportant. This will only encourage a child to go somewhere else for their information, and therefore limits a parent's influence. Embarrassment, ridicule, or rebuke will only teach a child to run in the other direction. Taking these recommendations seriously, and more importantly, carrying them out, provides increased protection for children. Unfortunately, sex doesn't represent the only images of concern flashing across our television screens. Violence is another area requiring a look. Violent entertainment. Violence has become a mainstay of American entertainment. Our action heroes go by the names of Bruce, Arnold, Sylvester, and Mel. They fill screens in a larger-than-life fashion and represent to our youth what it means to be proud and strong. Even children's entertainment, like Power Rangers and Powerpuff Girls, depict repeated acts of violence. Other children's programming, including cartoons, also depict acts of physical aggression, especially to solve problems. One of the principal results of viewing thousands upon thousands of violent acts on televisions and in movies is desensitization. Someone who moves to a house near the railroad tracks notices that they are awoken every night as the trains go by. However, after a while, they get used to the noise and are able to sleep through the night in spite of the racket. TV viewing and violence are no different. The results are that children become less sensitive to the pain and suffering of others by watching repeated acts of violence. The more they see violence-solving TV conflicts, the more likely they are to try the same. Children don't have the same grasp of reality as do adults. A cartoon figure may pop back up after being shot, but in real life, a person stays dead. Viewing also encourages children to become more aggressive by mimicking what they have seen. It wouldn't be unusual for a child to watch the Power Rangers and then proceed to karate chop the family dog. For other children, the violence they see feeds their views of a scary world. Children are affected by the violence they see on television. Unfortunately, parents are busy. There is much to do and too little time to do it in. This fact leaves a lot of unsupervised television time in the hands of children. Children are not mature enough to make healthy decisions about TV and movie viewing. They don't see problem programming coming at them. Kids don't recognize material for what it is. Violence is neither appropriate nor healthy. What children see turns into changes in their behavior. Children will do what they view. Those who watch violent shows are much more likely to disobey authority, lash out at others, and are less willing to wait and be patient. Children who repeatedly view people pushing, hitting, kicking, striking, stabbing, and shooting one another in television programs find such behavior more acceptable. Kids who spend their youth viewing a lot of violence without guidance and correction are much more likely to grow up to be aggressive as adults. That is why movies and television programs need to be watched with children. Parental supervision gives opportunities to correct for unhealthy lessons taught on the TV screen and to teach appropriate behavior and values. It is also an opportunity to point out to children the difference between make-believe and reality. However, violence doesn't travel alone on the big or small screen. Too often it walks hand in hand with fear. Fear vision. One of the primary results of violent and horror programming is an increased level of fear in some children. There is an invasion going on in our homes via TV, movies, and videos. These invaders bring material that we would never consciously allow our children to see. Unfortunately, parents unknowingly invite these invaders in. They depict violent acts and horrifying situations. These situations are perceived as real to young children. They are not yet able to distinguish between reality and fantasy. Kids believe that what happens on TV could become real in their lives. Monsters that evolve from toys and creatures that can enter dreams are just pretend to a young child. Common names in children's vocabularies have become Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Chucky, and an array of other characters representing twisted, bloodlusting creations from Hollywood's terror factory. Some monsters burst onto the scene in dreams and visit people while they sleep. They are murdered while they lay dozing. There is no escape. Even when killed, these spectators come back in a sequel. Other horror creations crash through doorways wielding gigantic chainsaws and wearing hockey masks. Even clowns have been turned into threatening figures with jagged teeth and blood-red eyes. Some monsters come in the form of children's toys that bite, maim, and murder. Even the playthings that once comforted children have become menacing. Usually, Hollywood promotes these movies as adult programming, but everyone knows they draw children as an audience. Some parents aren't wise enough not to allow their children to watch such frightening entertainment. There are some parents who view these horrors with their children, thinking that watching together will avoid any fear or anxiety. Unfortunately, a parent isn't there when a child is alone in the dark of night. Horror can be overwhelming and their images too vivid. The pictures that form in a child's mind simply won't go away. They come back to haunt. Sometimes children get exposed to these shows at another child's home. Often they are motivated to watch out of curiosity. Other times they don't want to be a scaredy cat and be ridiculed by their friends. Even if they are afraid, they don't let on because it's cool to watch. Sometimes it will be enough just to view the cover of a video at a video store or catch a commercial on TV to be frightened. Pictures can stick in the mind. These images have an effect on the mind and emotion because of a child's immaturity and vivid imagination. Because of the difficulty telling the difference between reality and fantasy, children tend to take these pictures at face value. If a simple glimpse at scary images can be frightening, consider the impact of a feature-length film. The area most frequently affected by this anxiety is sleep. Many children refuse to go to bed or fight going to sleep for fear of visits from these movie monsters. Other children are driven to their parents' beds for fear of sleeping alone. These images continue to flash across their minds. Still, other children experience horrifying nightmares of fearsome creatures breaking into their rooms, chasing or devouring them. They cringe in fear and hope that they are not found in their dreams. All manner of horrific imagery can flash through their minds as a child's imagination is at its peak. Those children who are particularly vulnerable are between the ages of 2 and 8. However, the frightening effects of movies and television are not limited to any age group or even to obviously scary material. Things that can become frightening for children can appear harmless to adults. Younger children are particularly vulnerable. That is why even comedy and science fiction programs can be frightening for a younger child. The reason for this was mentioned previously. Young children tend to confuse reality and fantasy. Also, due to immaturity, they can misperceive. Many times, what harms people on the screen are assumed to be able to harm in real life. Comedies containing embarrassing situations and even images of clowns can prompt fear in some children. However, programming that can create anxiety is not limited to horror, science fiction, or even action-adventure programming. It also includes the daily news. The news is not written for young people. It is mature by content. News programs show vivid depictions of car accidents, burning buildings, and crushing storms. These programs are presented during prime time. Murders, kidnappings, and molestations are also frequent fodder for the media canon. Bad things don't only happen to adults, children are often victims as well. Children seeing other children as victims make it all the easier to relate to and assume that the same things could happen to them. Visual images are powerful and tend to be regurgitated. Younger children are very concrete in the way that they think. What they can taste, touch, and see is real for them. Therefore, attempting to comfort a young child through mere words or by using logic isn't always successful. For younger children, maintaining the bedtime routine is helpful to combat anxiety. Being reassuring, giving hugs and kisses, or having a prayer or story is also helpful. Consistent routines and engaging in some form of distraction can be fundamental to dealing with anxiety. There are other steps parents can take when a child expresses fear at night. The first, of course, is to avoid watching scary material. These approaches can be taken when facing fears prompted by the television, world events, or normal childhood experiences. Checking under the bed, in closets, and in dark corners can reassure a frightened child that monsters are not hiding about. A child seeing the parent unafraid and discovering no fearsome creatures will be encouraging. Checking and showing that the windows are latched and secure and that blinds are drawn is beneficial. Securing doors and checking locks is especially helpful with children who have fear of a break-in or abduction. Reassuring them that they are safe and reminding them of other steps taken to keep them safe is appropriate. With respect to dreams, there are some steps parents can take to help with fears of nightmares. Dream catchers often have a positive effect. Dream catchers originated in Indian lore and are placed by the bed to catch bad dreams. They are usually colorful and imaginative and accepted by a child as having power to catch bad dreams before they get to them. Another technique is angel spray. This is especially effective in combination with prayer. The prayer asks God to send angels to protect and to watch over the child's dreams. Angel spray is actually just a small spray bottle with water and a few drops of mother's favorite perfume. This works to leave a comforting smell associated with mom. The scent is to remind the child that angels will watch over them in their dreams. Another explanation is that the aroma keeps bad dreams away. Some older children can be reasoned with concerning their fears. For example, it can be pointed out that what they fear can't possibly occur in real life. A child can also be shown how the scary things that they saw can't happen to them because steps have been taken to keep them safe. Children should also be reminded that parents are nearby. When children are fearful, they need to be heard by a sympathetic ear. A calm, concerned adult who takes the time to love, support, and reassure a child is the best intervention for anxiety. The opposite is also true. An uncaring or overly fearful parent will feed their children's fears. All children can be cautioned about watching scary movies and the reasons to avoid them. Due to curiosity, most children will still try to view unsuitable programs at times. However, they should also understand that if they do watch anything that disturbs them, that they are not going to be ridiculed or punished for coming to parents for support. There is generally no need to punish a child for watching the wrong thing. They have already gotten the consequence of having a bad emotional reaction. That is usually consequence enough. A parent needs only to point out the effects of watching such shows and give alternatives. However, a wise parent will also watch programs with their child and have ways to make inappropriate TV and video viewing harder to come by. The entertainment industry has repeatedly resisted attempts to make itself more responsible and sensitive to what children really need. They have not taken steps to protect our children. If anything, the entertainment industry has made our children more vulnerable to fears and likely to mimic violent acts. News reports frequently relay stories of a child getting injured due to reenacting something they saw on TV or a movie. Hollywood will not police itself. Money is their motivator. The effects of their masterpieces on children should prompt parents to take the entertainment bull by the horns and expel harmful programs from their homes. However, there is another avenue for images and other threats to enter homes. Some refer to it as the web. The Internet. The Internet provides many positives from entertainment to information. However, it can also represent the horrible. It is a tool that can be used for research and homework, or taking a stroll from porn site to porn site. Like any tool, the Internet can be used or abused. The web is full of spiders. It can be an avenue for predators to gain access to our children through chat rooms and emails. The draw of pornography is a strong one, especially for young males who are so easily stimulated through visual images. However, this temptation can cross gender boundaries. Teenage girls are also naturally curious and overly hormonal. Adolescents are drawn to things adult, not to mention what is seen as forbidden. Teaching children about how to protect themselves from dangers in the world is necessary. However, there is also a need for protecting children from themselves, their curiosity, and bowing to peer pressure. Unfortunately, children have access to computers in places other than their homes. The courts have let us down by allowing access to pornographic sites through computers at our public schools and libraries. They chant the slogans of free speech and choice. By doing so, they make our children more vulnerable. Even a child who is innocently surfing the net or doing research can stumble upon a pornography site. An innocent word search, a click of the mouse, and they can find naked bodies and all forms of sexual acts staring back at them. Once inside most of these sites, trying to escape can become futile. They will rotate from page to page or site to site, even with attempts to exit. Anyone who has spent much time on the web has probably had this experience by opening an innocent-looking email or doing a word search. There are images of everything from child pornography to bestiality and anything in between. Porn sites offer access from pictures to streaming video. A child needs only to give a click of the mouse to say they are over 18 and are able to tour pornographic sites. However, sexual material is not the only danger embedded in the World Wide Web. Sexual predators will go where they can have access to children. That is why organizations like the Boy Scouts have made such an effort to be careful about who leads their troops. Unfortunately, even when precautions are taken, we can still find those who would destroy our children in civic groups, our schools, and even in our churches. We tend to assume that in these settings there are adequate boundaries and safeguards to keep victimizers in check, but this isn't always the case. There is no guarantee of safety in these places, and even less assurance of protection when our children access the net. Predators frequently go into chat rooms. They usually represent themselves as something they are not. There is a great amount of anonymity via the net. A 40-year-old pedophile can describe himself as an 18-year-old high school senior, or everything and anything they want. Children enjoy attention and can get it through these chat rooms. It feels safe, and they enjoy connecting with others. A child may be needy and respond quickly to what appears to be a caring and concerned person. They don't realize that they are being manipulated and used. Children who are lonely, depressed, or otherwise emotionally vulnerable can be easy prey. There has been a rash of children being coaxed from their homes to meet these predators. Victimizers see kids as objects. Using our children as sexual toys is too often the outcome. As parents, we need to take steps to protect our children from the dark side of the Internet. Some of this protection involves talking with kids, setting boundaries, and enforcing the rules. Children should not be permitted to stay up until all hours of the night on the Internet. The web has an addictive quality that can consume time needed for sleep or school projects. It also becomes impossible to monitor Internet activities in those late hours, such as porn, email, and chat rooms. The amount of time on the Internet should be limited. Tying up phone lines, others needing net access, and the ability to monitor should all be reflected in the time limits. However, there can be extenuating circumstances due to schoolwork. A parent can always adjust for this need. Next, the computer needs to be placed in an area that is easily monitored. A public area of the house is best, rather than a private one where secrets can be kept and temptations can be dabbled in. The monitor should be facing in a direction where parents can easily see what children are viewing. Internet abuse should be made more difficult to hide. The possibility of getting away with involvement in unhealthy Internet activities is just too tempting for many children. Be sure to make the expectations about a child's Internet use very clear. Include in this how to respond when others want personal information from them. A child must understand never to give out their name, address, phone number, passwords, or email address. If this is of particular concern, you can have them sign a behavioral contract that outlines your expectations for their behavior regarding computer use. Both the child and the parents should have copies of this contract. A child should accept the contract before there is any further access to the Internet. Another matter for parents is that they should understand the workings of the Internet and computers. Parents need to have a basic knowledge of how to use the Internet and the computer, how to surf and how to get into chat rooms, as well as access specific sites. This helps to be aware of what children can get into and what they are doing. Therefore, a child's use of the web becomes easier to monitor. For example, web servers provide a history option to see what Internet sites have been accessed from the computer. There is also history tracking software that can be purchased. This is good to know when more in-depth monitoring is needed to protect kids. Lives are busy. At times we naively trust our children and not all their computer use can be easily monitored. The good news is that there is help. Software is available to restrict accessing inappropriate sites. Filtering software should be seriously considered. Many Internet servers will provide filtering options, otherwise programs can be purchased separately. A few widely used filters are and can be found at cyberpatrol.com, netnanny.com, and cybersitter.com. However, while filters limit access to adult material as well as chat rooms, they are not perfect. Parents need to realize that a determined teenager or one with a computer-savvy friend can still find ways to access sites that they shouldn't. Even the best of systems can have holes that allow the determined to get around parts of the filters. Therefore, while a filter is a wonderful device, there is still no substitute for monitoring. Parents can also add a password that only they know, so that a child can't access the computer without them knowing. Combining a filter, a password, and monitoring with rules for the Internet road provides as much safety as is possible. Rules for roaming the Internet. Rules provide protection. Children don't always understand this, but rules need to be employed nonetheless. Our children's safety is just too important. The following 10 rules should be shared, explained, and agreed to before accessing the World Wide Web. 1. A child will only use the Internet as prescribed by their parents. This includes their purpose for using, time limits, and the time of day for use. 2. A child will not access inappropriate Internet sites as described by their parents. This can include, but not be limited to, pornography, chat rooms, and downloading. 3. A child will immediately tell their parent if they come across information that is uncomfortable or inappropriate. There will be times when a child will innocently stumble on forbidden materials accidentally. 4. A child will never give out personal information on the Internet. This includes the sites presumably designed and assumed safe for kids and teens. 5. A child will never agree to meet anyone that they talk to online. They must first talk to and get the approval of their parents. Then parents will be present for any such meeting. 6. A child will never send anything to others without checking with their parent first. This includes mail, email, text messages, instant messaging, and anything else computer prophets think up. A special no for pictures and addresses applies. 7. A child will not respond to any messages that use foul or aggressive language or in any way make them feel uncomfortable. 8. A child will tell their parents if they receive any foul or nasty messages online. 9. A child will not participate in any chat rooms or other sharing sites without their parents' knowledge and approval. 10. A child understands that they will lose computer and Internet privileges if rules for the Internet road are broken. Additional consequences may also occur. Parents need to be prepared to appropriately follow up if their child is threatened through the Internet. Law enforcement agencies have people designated to deal with these matters. Caring parents also need to be prepared to take away Internet and computer privileges when their child breaks these rules. Another area in need of monitoring on the net is downloading music. Music can be downloaded from the web, received from friends, or bought at the corner store. It becomes easier and easier to get a hold of inappropriate music because of these retailers, the Internet, and friends. Unfortunately, not all music is pleasing to the ears. Sick music. Vulgarity, sexuality, violence, suicide, and women as sex objects are common themes contained in what passes as much of the popular music of our time. Some of these forms of entertainment creating the greatest concern are punk rock, acid rock, and the all-too-popular rap. Parents need to know what children are listening to. That means paying attention to what is on their radios and MP3 players, what they choose to listen to in our automobiles, and what CDs they are popping into their stereos or computers. Kids will argue that the words of songs don't bother them or that they don't pay attention. They just like the music. Don't you believe it? What is repeatedly heard has effects on attitudes and emotions. These in turn prompt behavior. For example, irritability and rebelliousness are common effects of these forms of music. Children see these rock stars as famous, having riches and getting loads of attention. They have become idols for our youth. These stars project an image of power and influence, but too often exemplify all that is perverse in society. Promotion of alcohol and drug use, promiscuity, and abusing others runs rampant. The messages these songs carry are virulent and infect our children. Eminem is a popular rapper making the jump to movies. His songs show his rage and hatred, particularly towards women. But he doesn't stop there. He sings of the delight in the thoughts of killing his own mother. Music can promote violence. However, violence is also found in children's games. Violent games. Violent video games represent another way many children occupy their time and fill their minds. The same concerns that apply to violent movies and TV apply here. Time limits on video game use and when they can be used should be instituted. Desensitization to the pain of others is a primary concern. There is also the addictive quality of these games, which can cause a child to withdraw into their own world and ignore important parts of living. Social interaction and interpersonal skills can suffer greatly. Children who are consumed with video games frequently suffer from problems relating to others, agitation, and depression. Excessively violent video games should be eliminated and others played with caution. Summary. The burden of protecting our children is greater now than at any other time. The threats of abductions and abuse, as well as the flood of sex and violence through television, movies, and music, seem unstoppable. They move like a wave, covering and consuming all in their path. Our children are having their natural curiosity for sex exploited. Entertainment also preaches the right to become aggressive in solving problems and expressing emotion. Some children are prompted to be aggressors and others victims. Many children suffer the result of fear from their entertainment. Fears produced by what children are seeing and hearing requires calming and comforting. Entertainment includes other areas of consumption. The Internet represents a particular danger which can threaten through the possibilities of promoting sex and violence. Predators also prowl the web and put our children at risk of abduction, abuse, and fear. Even music and video games present threats. It is time for we as parents to step up and protect our children. Their future health and happiness weighs in the balance. Parents make all the difference.